All right, class. First off, as always, good day. So here's the thing. We are continuing the um, explanation of the president's power. All right. This is a shorter video than other ones, so just be prepared for that. Now, before we get to the notes, here is your warm-up picture. So if you have the packet, you already have the questions, so you can go ahead and answer them. If you don't have the packet, um, line sheet of paper works. Just be sure you put on the side warm up, and then notes and then question. So that way I can see where each section goes. Okay. So your warm up picture. First off, as always, what do you see? Okay. Analyze the picture. What do you see? Okay. There's not much to it, so it shouldn't be too hard. Now, knowing these images, these things that you see, all right. So first thing you should really notice is that the Statue of Liberty isn't holding a torch. She's holding a balance. Okay. So look at that and look at the position of each group. Is it one more than the other? Okay. So with all that, the second question is, what do you think this artist is trying to say? All right. Look at the Statue of Liberty. Look at what she's holding. Look what's in the containers. And what do you think this cartoonist is trying to say? Okay. So once you finish that, get ready for the notes and they'll begin in a couple seconds. All right, so in the other video, we talked about the beginnings of the presidential powers, the requirements, things like that. Now we're going to get to some more of the um, meat of the president power. Now we're not going to go over everything the power the president has, but mainly the important stuff. Okay. Now under Article 2 of the Constitution, the powers of the president is kind of vague. There's some things that are specific, some things are not really specific. And that's where it leaves room for interpretation. Okay. So one of the first things that is right there and said in black and white is that the president has the power to make treaties, okay, to negotiate peace with other countries. But the thing is, they need the Senate to vote on it, 2/3. Okay. Now I'm sure you're thinking, well, why wouldn't we want to have peace with another country? That makes no sense. Um, but the thing is, it has happened before where the president has negotiated peace with other countries and all of a sudden our Congress basically shut it down. Two of the biggest ones were first one in 1919 at the end of World War One. What happened was Woodrow Wilson made this thing called the League of Nations. Okay, excuse me. Now the thing is, it was kind of like if we would help out Britain, France, and if anyone attacked them, we would join in to help them. This was kind of way like don't don't try to pick on this person because they got backup. It was kind of a way to discourage people from fighting one another because if you fought this one person, you got these other countries there to back them up, and who do you got? Type of thing. Um, the problem was a lot of Americans were like, why are we joining this? That kind of stuff is happening on the other side of the world. That's for the European countries to decide on. They want to back each other up, fine. Don't get us involved because that's nothing to do with us. We have the Atlantic Ocean separating us. We got our own stuff. We can't be joining in every time somebody over there in Europe decides to trip and starts to want to have war. That's not our fight. Okay, so a lot of the people um, told their congressmen and representatives not to vote for it, and they didn't. So that's why we um, didn't really sign up for the uh, League of Nations. The other thing that happened was in 1979, Jimmy Carter basically had this thing with the SALT deal. It was this called for Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. And what happened was this. Basically, Russia had this much nuclear weapons, we had about this much. And what happened was this deal would basically limit the powers of both of them, how much weapons to be making. Because remember, we had atomic weapons basically ready to go at each other. This was during the Cold War. And the thing was, a lot of people were like, no, no. Even if we go down here, Russia comes down this much, they still have that much weapons more than us. So they didn't like that deal. So then came the SALT 2, and that was more even, and that's the one that got passed. But the SALT 1 didn't. The other power that the president have comes in the form of legislation. Now, the president usually outlines what the country should be going for, what the country's goals should be at the State of Union address, which is just about every January, and it's held in the joint session of Congress. Now, usually the president will come out and say we should be focusing on education and our military and things like that, and they'll propose their plan to get there. And some people like it, some people don't. It's differs every year. Now, the other thing that president have when it comes to legislation is the veto. Okay, basically, if something goes through Congress and it comes to his desk and he doesn't like it, the president can veto it. Now, here's the thing. Again, the president is not all powerful. They are not the king of the world. So when they veto something, it goes back to Congress. Now, if Congress really wants it to pass, they have to have two-thirds of both houses, House of Representatives and the Senate, to vote on it. So, like in the Senate, there's 100 senators. Basically, they would need 66 senators to vote for it. 65 won't do it. It has to be 66 or above. In the House of Representatives, there are several hundred representatives, and they would need two-thirds of them to say yes. Now, if they get both of them, two-thirds, then it automatically passes. There's nothing the president can do after that because he used his veto. He tried to stop it, and the country said, no, we want this, and it passes. So that's one way that Congress has power over the president. Yeah, he has that power over them, but they can override him. Okay, so again, the president is not all powerful. Now, the problem is to get two-thirds, it is a difficult task. It has been done. It will be done again, but it's very difficult to get both houses to vote two-thirds yes. Okay. All right, so now we get into the fun stuff. The inherent powers. This is basically powers are said right there in the Constitution for the president. So again, making treaties, having ambassadors, receiving and appointing ambassadors. That's straight up in the Constitution. And then we get to this part called the executive agreement. Basically, if the president has an agreement with another country, he doesn't need the Senate's approval, or Senate to say we're going to vote on it. No. Basically, the Supreme Court ruled that these agreements between the president and foreign powers are within the inherent powers. Okay, so there's something subtle in the inherent powers that says the president can do this, and there's nothing that the Senate can do. You know. Now, this last one is my favorite of all the powers of the president. This is like, oh man, they use this one. This is like their wild card that they can use. It's called executive privileges. Basically, it's this: the president decides what information is being shared to Congress, the courts, or you, the people, you and me. You know, a claim of executive privileges is based on the separation of powers. Okay, so what that means is that if he feels that the anything could hurt diplomatic ties, or it might be revealing military secrets, or it could be detrimental to the security of the nation, then the president could hold back on it. They wouldn't have to say anything. Um, and also, it gives the notion that people around the president can talk freely without being like, oh, you know, oh, someone said this about this and such. We want to know who it is, Mr. President. We want to know exactly who said this. if the president didn't have the executive privileges, they would have to tell them it was this person, or they would be held under contempt, or basically stopping the process of justice. So that's the thing, to protect people, because if the president had to tell every time someone told him something, would anybody tell the president anything? Think of it like that. If someone you knew, um, you told your biggest secret to, basically snitched on you, are you going to trust that person again with them some type of secret, any type of secret? Chances are you're not, because they just threw the rat on you, and you're like, I can't trust you. I trusted you with the secret, and you just blabbed it out. So that's why. Okay, but the thing is, some of these presidents have used this for their own privilege, to try to get away from stuff. So, example, the Watergate scandal was a good one. Um, People found out the uh, Nixon was having people burglarize the Democratic headquarters at Watergate, and to find out their secrets and things like that, what they're doing, what they're planning, and those people got caught, and he's like, "No, I didn't know anything about it. Oh, I'm not allowed to tell you anything because it's executive privileges, because this could hurt the country." And it took two reporters, Bernstein and Woodward, to find the investigation and find out the truth. So after that, the president couldn't hide. And then they found out there was tapes. And then he said, no, those are executive privileges, because things that are said there is what's being said, um, in private and stuff like that. But then the Supreme Court was involved, and they were like, no, because this information that's being said here is really needed for justice to see who's involved in this crime. You know, did the president abuse his power and stuff like that? So they said overwhelmingly, no, you cannot hide behind the executive privilege. This doesn't apply to it. Um, and so that's a whole process, right? Now, some presidents have continued to use this, um, and that's one of the things. It's one of those gray matters that is the president lying? Where are they hiding behind? Where are they hiding? Things like that. And this is where before Nixon, people trusted the president. After Nixon, people really didn't trust the president anymore because the trust was broken. And when they hide behind executive privilege, people get suspicious on like what are they trying to hide. All right. So here is your midpoint question. What is your opinion on the executive privilege clause? Okay. Now, again, take your prejudices or your love for any president, Trump, Obama, Clinton, Bush Jr., you know, whomever. Take away that prejudice or that love, move it away, and think of any president with the executive privilege. Do you think this president should be able to use it anytime, or do you think they have to at least justify why they're not sharing the secret? At least give us a little something. What do you think? Okay, justify your answer, explain it. So if you don't know how to start off the sentence, it's right there on the bottom for you. But if you want to write on your own, that's fine. Just be sure that you actually, start off the sentence the right way, not because this and that. No, right? Complete sentence. Okay. All right, so now this is the line of succession. If the president is killed, they're hospitalized, or they can't perform their duties in any which way, either mental um, disability or physical, you know, to the point where they can't do their job, um, then the next comes in line, which would be the vice president. After that, the Speaker of the House, President pro tempore of the Senate, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and so on and so forth. The last spot is the Secretary of Homeland Security. Now, the thing is, you have to remember, this is not a knock on anyone else, like, oh, the Secretary of Agriculture is more important than the Secretary of Labor. No. It's just that as time went on, these positions would be placed next, 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 next. Okay, that's why the Homeland Security is the last one, because they were basically just created like in 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. Right? It wasn't something that was around since 1870. You know, no, it's recently, it's new, so that's why it's so far behind, as opposed to the Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Interior. All right. So again, that's the succession. Now that picture over there to your right, that tells a little history right there, because the day after Kennedy was actually the day of Kennedy's assassination, Lyndon B. Johnson is sworn in as President of the United States with Jackie Onassis, Kennedy's wife, watching right next to him. And Kennedy's body is basically right underneath them. It's in the cargo area of the plane. So some people felt that that was disrespectful, to have his body right there. It's not even cold yet, and they're swearing in a new president, and the wife is bearing witness. The other thing is, you have to remember, this is when we're at the Cold War. Us and Russia, we have our nuclear weapons pointing at each other and our allies. And the thing is, it's like, oh, the president's down. The country's in mourning. We should attack because they have no leader. So it's important, it's imperative at that time that there was somebody in charge, that the world knew somebody has stepped up. The next person's in charge. They're here to be president. So we're not without a leader. Okay. So again, there are some people who felt one way, some people felt the other. Okay. All right, so here is your last question. Now, this one doesn't really connect with the other information from this lesson, but I want you to think this, because you have to remember, some presidents, they get elected because of their parties, mainly because of their parties. You know, they're not liked by the Democrats or independents, but they are liked by the Republicans. So they are the leader of their political party, which says, we like this, we hate this, we should get rid of this. So my question to you is this: does the president's job as the party leader clash with their duties as president? Because remember, the job of the president is to make the life of everybody's better, not just those who voted for them or those who share the same ideas as them. It's supposed to be for every American. Okay, that's their job. It's not just, oh, you voted for me, I'm gonna make your life better. You didn't vote for me, I'm gonna make your life hell. No, that's a personal grudge and vendetta. That's not what a president's supposed to do. That's an abuse of power, and that's mainly kind of like a king, or an emperor. You don't follow me, I'm gonna make your life hell. You know. And the other thing is, should there be more regulation on the president? Should there be somebody looking more at the president, seeing what they do, make sure that they don't abuse their power, make sure that somebody going over their shoulder, like basically, hey, you can't do that. As president, you can't do that. So what do you think? Okay, so as you see, I did not leave a writing prompt because I want to see how you started off. Okay, so if you don't know how to start off, look at the other videos, or even just this video. There's that writing prompt I gave you for the midpoint. See how I did it. Try to do it for you, okay? Um, Again, this is just for me to see if you got the process of writing down a complete sentence down. If you got the idea how to do it, okay? So, with that is the end of our lesson. I hope you learned something new. Um, and that's it. So, don't forget to turn in your papers into the black basket as you come into the classroom, and make sure your name, date, and the days that you're here and period are on your paper. Okay, so Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and which period. Okay, so with that being said, you guys have a good day. Take care. Be safe.